Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart for those of you that are new. And today I'll be breaking down this 8-game NBA slate here for Tuesday night on DraftKings. Just break down each and every game, talking through my favorite plays, some value plays, how to get different, how to attack the slates, as well as my core plays and a potential lineup build for this slate tomorrow. As always, injury news changes the entire slate. So really the early look build or core plays really probably won't stand or last until the lock when the slate starts. So as always, stay updated with injury news because that changes the entire slate and how you want to attack it. If you guys are looking for more in-depth breakdowns, those will start on my Patreon in 1 week. So I'm targeting December 6th for my NBA prize pick plays and picks to come back for my videos. My picks, those will be back in about 1 week. December 6th, hopefully, is when I'll start. So those will be on my Patreon. I'll drop those earlier in the day, and then I'll put out my other stuff on YouTube for free later in the day. So make sure to check that out. That's happening December 6th, along with my NBA write ups. Those are back. But as of right now, up until that point, just doing my updated core plays right before lock. But yeah, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And let's get right into this 8-game slate here. Recapping tonight, my core plays were Malcolm Brogdon, Tyrese Maxey, Christian Brown, and then Jalen Duren. And right now, I was unable to pull up the lineup on my screen. My internet's very slow right now. Very unfortunate. Just gets super slow during the week. There's a ton of people on the Wi-Fi. But right now, if my phone will load, we'll give that a second. But diving into the games here for tomorrow, they have, I think, most of them up here. We get the the Bucks and Heat starting off here for tomorrow. 3-point spread, 226 total. Bulls, Celtics, obviously huge blowout risk there. 12.5 point spread, 217.5 game total, not the best. Raptors, Nets, 1.5 point spread, 223. Hawks, Cavs, 4.5 point spread there, 237 game total. So that's a pretty interesting game there. Knicks, Hornets, great game environment there, obviously, for the Knicks going against the Hornets, 11.5 point spread, so blowout risk, but 223 total. Thunder, Timberwolves, 226, 4 point spread. Rockets, Mavs, 232.5, 5.5 point spread. And then Warriors, Kings, 238.5, 2 point spread, a late night hammer there. So that looks like a great game environment. But yeah, right now, for the core plays, Maxey was extremely low owned. He went off for 51 there. They won by like 40. Anthony Davis is a fraud. Joel Embiid absolutely exposed him. Jalen Duren got in massive foul trouble, but still got us 44 fantasy points there. So that's almost 100 between those two. He was only 20% owned as well. So came in a lot lower owned than I thought. Brogdon finished the game with 37. So he was pretty solid there. And then Christian Brown, the game is going to start in, I think, 40 minutes. So we'll see how he is to do. But the core plays have been really good the past week. So looking to continue that into tonight's, this or tomorrow night's slate here. As always, make sure to stay updated with my core plays on Patreon, link down below. But into the Chicago game here, obviously huge blowout risk here going against Boston. But it's one of those things, Zach LaVine, questionable for this game here. Should probably be good to go. He's played, I think, pretty much every single game so far with the questionable tag. But obviously, we have to keep an eye out for that news. If he's out, obviously, to make guys like DeRozan and Vooch really strong plays. Kobe White would be even better play there in the mid range. Caruso, if he did play, he'd be very solid value play at 4.6. And then you could take a shot on a guy like Patrick Williams, who would maybe start or come off the bench there and would look to be a little bit more aggressive. Would be a pretty decent value play, 4,200. Obviously, if Zach is back, we'll get the full starting lineup of Zach, DeMar, Vooch, White, and then potential Caruso if he's good to go. Otherwise, they'd probably start. I think they'd probably throw in Torrey Craig. If that's the case, then Zach, DeMar, and Vooch, they all very strong plays. They're all coming at pretty cheap price tags. I feel the safest with Vooch. Zach probably has the highest ceiling, obviously a little bit the most scoring dependent. And DeMar is kind of in between those two. Obviously, does have a ceiling at times. It's not been the best this season. I mean, this team has been terrible. They're going to blow it up. I feel like within the next month, I don't think these guys survive past Christmas on this team. They're just god awful. But in terms of DFS, all three of these guys are strong plays. I think even if Zach is back, I still think Kobe White's a fine mid-range play. And if Caruso is back and does start, I really like him at 4.6. Coming off a pretty disappointing game there, which is very surprising. Only played 18 minutes and it's a pretty close game. I do think he had a foot injury. I think that's what kept him out. So stay updated with that there. But yeah, some decent interest in the Chicago side, even though they're going up against Boston. It's a huge blowout risk. Right now, Porzingis is out. Holiday and White are questionable. Obviously, that's huge news there. But if Holiday and White are good to go, I still really like the price tag of Tatum, and I do really like the price tag on Brown. They both look super solid. Obviously, having Porzingis out really helps out both those two, as well as the third option, whether that's Holiday or White, who would be strong secondary options. Um, they will start Horford if there's no Porzingis and possibly no Holiday, Horford to get the start last time. So if he starts again, I think he's a fine, play. They'll need his size guarding Vooch. So he should see close to, 25, 30 minutes. At 6K, not the best price tag, but still, I think it's a solid play there, secondary option. In terms of the rest of the team, really no interest in these guys. Maybe you could take a shot on a guy like Peyton Pritchard, hope there is blowout run. But otherwise, they're kind of priced up to the point where there's not really worth going to those value guys. Moving on to Toronto here. Toronto side, Scotty Barnes' price is, kind of plummeting. So as we saw at the beginning of the season, way too cheap here. We played him pretty much every single slate. Was absolutely killing it. Finally, they priced him out right where he got up into the low 9K range. And then he had a couple of bad games, had a 50-point game, 42-point game, but 33. And now he's all the way back down to 8.6K. Nothing has really changed here. Sure, his shot attempts are down a little bit here. Pascal's has kind of gone up a little bit. Gary Trent's back, but still, Scotty Barnes is going to lead this team in offense. 8.6 is a very strong price tag here going against the Nets. Pascal, more so of a contrarian play here. Don't mind him. He has been more aggressive and better recently. Schroeder comes in at a pretty interesting price tag as well. I think it's a pretty solid play here in the mid-range. Very up and down. So at 6.3K, not the best price tag for a guy who's pretty up and down, but still does offer that double-double upside with points and assists. Should play mid to low 30s minutes. Total, this is one of those games where it's questionable. So against Chicago and Cleveland, two pretty tall teams, he played more than 30 minutes in both, which is great to see. As you can see, he is fantastic upside there. Double upside, can get steals, blocks, assists, can do a little bit of everything. It was a really strong play there for me last night against Cleveland. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things now that Brooklyn, they do have Claxton, but they are a pretty small team. More kind of like all 6'8" or below. So this is one of those games where it's risky to play Podol just because he could see less than 25 minutes. If that's the case, he's pretty risky at that price tag 6K, but still, I think it's a solid GPP risky play there in the mid range. Moving on down here, I think OG, it's a fine play if you land on him. Should see mid 30s minutes. As you can see, he has a low floor, but also has a pretty high ceiling of 41.5. So I think him and Podol are fine GPP options if you land on them. Gary Trent's an interesting value play. He's very score independent, but he is coming in at 4.1K and should see 20 plus minutes and should probably shoot the ball 8 plus times. So I have a good amount of interest in him right now. Precious, kind of the same thing. His minutes have been down recently, but he should see around 15 to 20 minutes. Is a decent point per minute guy, so he's a decent value. Flynn, I want to go to him, even though he's seen some decent minutes. And Boucher's minutes have really, really dropped recently, so I don't think I'd get to him, even though he's a pretty solid point per minute guy if he does play. Moving on to Brooklyn here. Once again, the big news here is going to be Cam Thomas, which it looks like he's doubtful. So once again, we'll get the kind of similar offense that we got to the Nets as we did last year. With Bridges, Dinwiddie leading the team, both look like pretty strong plays. I don't love the price tags on either one, but obviously they'll be contrarian at those price tags. Simmons is still out. Cam Thomas is doubtful. Claxton, here's the big news. He missed the last game, but I think he should be good to go. So I think he's a very strong player at 6.3. Absolutely love his upside there for Claxton. Sometimes the minutes are a little bit wacky. Sometimes they do finish with Trenton Wofford, makes no sense, but still, absolutely, love the price tag here of Claxton 6.3. Lonnie, that price tag, more so of an okay play. Like he will come off the bench, play anywhere from 15 to mid 20s minutes, depending on how he's hitting shots, but I don't love the price tag there. Cam Johnson is questionable. Obviously, if he's out, they could possibly move into the starting lineup. A guy like Royce O'Neal, who had a huge game there last game against the Bulls, but it really only depends if Cam Johnson's out. Obviously, Cam Johnson in. You could land on Royce O'Neal and DFS. Don't love those plays, but they are fine because they'll see mid 20s, 30 plus minutes if they're doing well. Cam Johnson is probably my third favorite on this team behind Mikal Bridges and Claxton. 6.1K has a pretty solid season. As you can see, he had 2 40-point games in a row. If he's shooting the ball well, distributing, getting some rebounds, but obviously he has a low floor if he's not hitting the shots. So I do think he's a pretty strong play there at 6.1. If you don't want to pay up for Dinwiddie or Bridges, you can get Claxton and Cam Johnson. A little bit riskier plays, but obviously a lot cheaper. Moving on to ATL here. Trae Young's been really, really solid the past week and a half. So don't mind him as a spend up, but obviously don't love the matchup here going against a pretty, decent defensive team. Cleveland was one of the better defensive teams, if not the best. I think they were for a while last season. But obviously they have fallen off hard a little bit here. Obviously Allen's missed a good amount of games. They've been very injured. But yeah, Trae Young's a fine spin up play. Murray's fine in the mid range. The big news here is obviously Jalen Johnson. With him being out, I think they moved, was it Sadiq Bey is starting. He started that last game with Jalen Johnson, moved to the bench, 5.6K. I actually don't love the price tag here with Bay. Like, I think it's a fine play, but we did see at the beginning of the season when he was starting, you know, he was a fine play. He didn't do the best, he didn't do the worst. He was just kind of there in the mid range. So I think it's a fine play. I think I'd rather take a shot on a guy like Hunter, who is, who should see more minutes, and he's a little bit more aggressive offensively, a little bit better of a shooter. Obviously, probably more up and down, the riskier play, and he's pricier. But that's kind of my take between those two. I do like Bogdan here in the mid range. He should see even more minutes off the bench there, be even more aggressive. Sometimes he is scoring dependent, but at 5.7 looks like a pretty solid play here. Capella's fine. Kongwu will split the center minutes with him. His price is slowly going down after they jacked it up for a while. Could be some foul trouble for Kongwu going against those tall guys. So maybe you take it, or foul trouble against Capella for those tall guys. So maybe you take a shot on Kongwu. But otherwise, don't love too much there for Atlanta. On to the Cleveland side here. I think Donovan Mitchell's at a pretty interesting price tag here. Obviously, with Garland back, it does come to limit the ceiling a little bit for Donovan Mitchell, but still, he should be a super contrarian play. I do have interest in him. Mobley, Garland are fine there in the mid range. They both have ceilings, but with this team kind of fully healthy, finally, no one really sticks out to me, price point wise. Allen has been flashing a ceiling recently, so I still don't mind going to him if you do land on him. Otherwise, everyone's priced about right. I do have interest in the Coral. If he's not going to be on a minutes limit here, he should probably, what's the starters going to be? Mitchell, Mobley, Garland, Strus, and Allen. So he'll move back to the bench here. So I guess he's more so of an okay value play. He was a lot better when he was starting, but now that they're fully healthy, he'll be moving back to the bench. Yeah, everyone's kind of priced about right. No real strong interest in Cleveland besides Donovan at the top for me. For Milwaukee here, obviously a little bit of a slower pace matchup here for Milwaukee going into Miami, but 11.4K for Giannis if you feel good with the value. Giannis has been really, really strong lately. The past, 4 out of the past 5 games, he's gone for 50 or more with, a 60 and 270 bombs. Obviously, a few of those games there was no Dame, but still, Giannis looks great as a spend up. Dame looks like a strong mid-range play who's becoming more and more consistent recently with his shots hitting. So I do have strong interest in him. Brook Lopez is one of those guys that does flash a ceiling, but his minutes are still a little bit all over the place, so it's hard to trust him. Not really finally loading. As you can see here, the past 4 games, he's done very, very well. But it's one of those things, I don't think I can trust these shot attempts for him to continue shooting that well there. So he's more so of an okay secondary play. Middleton also will be back, most likely. He's questionable, but we'll see. So obviously, if he's back, it does hurt the ceiling of a guy like Lopez. Dame and Giannis a little bit. He'll still be at a minutes limit. But obviously, if he's out, it looks like Brook Lopez will kind of move into that third, score for them. It is a little bit more aggressive, which obviously makes him a little bit better versus a secondary option. Portis off the bench should see mid-20s minutes. I think he's a fine play, 5.8, more so of a GPP play. BZ, kind of the same thing, more so GPP play. Don't love the price tag in him, but I think he's a fine play. They're kind of running low on these kind of shooting guards and small forwards, so he'll play good amounts. Connaughton's a fine value, 3.7. Hasn't been shooting the ball a ton, but he can flash that upside if he does hit a few threes early. And then, Marjan Beauchamp should see 10 to 15 minutes as well. They have been starting Jackson, but he's more of a spot starter. Nothing too crazy there. Moving on to Miami here. Obviously, a lot of news right now with the Miami side. Bam questionable, Jimmy questionable, Tyler Hero's still out. Kyle Lowry is questionable as well. So this is more so of a wait and see approach because these guys are all, Bam's probable, but Jimmy's questionable. I think they should be good to go. Duncan's questionable as well, but he did practice in full. So I'm expecting this team to be fully healthy. And with that said, Bam, don't love the price tag here in this matchup. More, even though, Milwaukee's been Swiss cheese defensively, it does make these guys interesting, contrarian plays. Bam, don't love the price tag there, but he's been really good recently. I like the price tag a lot here for Jimmy. We know what he did to Milwaukee in the playoffs. One of those teams he really steps up against. So I actually really like the upside here for Jimmy at 8.3. A little bit of kind of a revenge game for that Eastern Conference, first round playoffs from last year. Duncan's, been pretty strong in the mid range, but still don't love the price tag in him. Jaime has been very, very good off the bench here. So if you want to continue that streak with him, don't mind it at 5.4. Otherwise, Lowry, more so of an interesting GPP play. I know he's seen close to 30 minutes the past 5 games, but when I play him, he does absolutely nothing. Frustrating stuff, but still 5.1K. If he sees 30 minutes, he should be a pretty solid play. So I do have a good amount of interest in him. And that's really it. A lot of these bench guys got priced up when some of these guys were out, like Jimmy and Bam. So not a ton of interest in these bench guys for me. Kevin Love's always an interesting GPP option, but still minutes are all over the place. Moving on to Charlotte and New York here. So for the Charlotte side, LaMelo Ball is questionable, most likely doubtful. So Terry Rozier should be the starting point guard, should handle kind of a little bit of everything. So I have a good amount of interest in him. Bridges is a strong play just because of his minutes, and he's good upside. So, well, I like those guys a good amount. Mark Williams, most of a strange secondary play. Hayward should see more run there at the point with no LaMelo, so he's a stronger play. Brandon Miller, PJ Washington are fine if you land on them. Nothing really crazy there. That's really it. It's really just kind of sticking to the two guys at the top, Bridges and Rozier for me. If you want to get a little bit more different, you can go to Hayward, Miller, and Washington, who at their price tags, they do have some ceiling that they can get to, but I don't love landing on them or going out of my way to play them right now. For New York, obviously, it's a great matchup here. I feel better going to Randall just because he has better upside with the rebounds and assists. Brunson's a little bit more score independent, but obviously a fantastic matchup here going against Charlotte's Barrett. These are pretty interesting GPP play. One of those guys that's pretty bad in terms of DFS. Has been the best in real life as well, but still 5.9K for a guy who can get aggressive. Do like him. And I actually really like quickly here. One of those guys, as you can see, who should be pretty popular. 5.3K for a guy who should see mid-20s minutes. Is usually very aggressive, really good score, microwave score. In this matchup here, really, really like quickly going against Charlotte and those guards on the Charlotte side. Mitchell Robinson, always a random GPP option there in the mid-range. If you can stay out of foul trouble, does have a decent ceiling. He's always a GPP option. Hard to find play, don't mind him. But it's really just going to be quickly for me or going to one of the two main guys at the top in Brunson or Randall. Moving on to, OKC here. SGA has been one of those guards who's been fantastic, so I don't mind paying up for him. Does seem like a pretty cheap price tag for how he's been playing recently. Chet, kind of the top price range for me, but still, he's been very, very strong recently. So I think it's a fine option if you land on him. Giddey, yeah. Not going to play him. He's more so of a contrarian play. Jalen Williams is also back, which obviously hurts guys like Chet and Giddey and all these other guys coming off the bench. Like, Joe was, I think starting for a little bit. All these other guys don't really have much interest in them. Carson Wallace should move back to the bench. He was actually starting for Jalen Williams. But yeah, with Jalen Williams back, it does hurt the upside for Chet a little bit in terms of how aggressive he is offensively. Same thing with Giddey and same thing with a guy like Dort. So really right now it's going to be Jalen Williams if he's not on a minutes limit. He is the most interest for me alongside SGA. And then Chet's a decent secondary option alongside Giddey. And then maybe you can get to one of the value options like Kenneth Williams, who should see maybe 10 to 15 minutes, but I think it's kind of forced value. OKC always loves to go to like 12 different people. Moving on to Minnesota here. Still absolutely love the price tag of Anthony Edwards. I still think he's pretty, cheap here at this price of 8.9K. One of those guys in a close game, he's going to see close to 40 minutes, shoot the ball close to 20 times, and has a really, really high ceiling. So absolutely love him. I think Towns is still a pretty strong play here at 8.6. Gobert is always just a random GPP contrarian play here in the secondary option. Don't love him. Conley's there, Anderson's there, and AW's there. Naz Reid's a pretty cheap price tag here for a guy who's super foul prone, but he does have a pretty decent ceiling. So I think he's probably my third favorite play behind Towns and Edwards. That's only guys that really stick out to me so far for the Minnesota side. Everyone else is kind of there. For Houston, Sengun, my boy, was great for me last slate. 43 minutes against Jokic. Baby Jokic absolutely destroyed Big Jokic. Even a Big Jokic, obviously, stuffs the stat sheet. Obviously, MVP, best player in the league, but still, Sengun was great for me last slate. Still really like him. He's just flashed huge upside here. Mini Jokic. So 8.5 does seem like a lot, but still very, very strong play there. Van Fleet is questionable. That is big news, but he should be good to go. Another one of those guys. I just love him because of minutes. Like, he's going to be playing 40 minutes a game. Doesn't matter that he's only shooting 12 times a game. He has a huge upside there when he's playing 40 minutes a game. So he's priced accordingly, but still, I think it's a strong GPP option. Same thing with Sengun. Green, Smith, and Brooks, all fine plays. Don't mind landing on them if you do, but I'd rather just get to the two guys at the top. Did not know Victor is on this team. Totally forgot about that. Looks like he's getting closer to returning. It looks like a little bit. Eason's a fine value play. I actually don't mind if you land on him at 4.2K. And that's really, it's not a ton of interest there. It's really just Eason as value and then two guys at the top. Moving on to Dallas here. I do like Luca here at 11.6. Same thing with Kyrie, both strong secondary options. That's really it for me. Lively is questionable. If he's good to go, don't mind taking a shot on him in 5,000. Pretty risky there, but does have some upside. Otherwise, you can take a shot on Grant Williams. He's been all over the place. He's been very bad recently, but he should see in a close game, should see 30 plus minutes. So at 4,000, I do think he's a strong value. He does have some upside, even though he's been terrible recently. Holmes looks like he's kind of going to be the backup big. If that's the case, I think he's a strong value at 4,000. And that's really it. And moving on to the late night hammer, a pretty good game here to target DFS wise. Obviously, high total, pretty cheap price tag for a guy like Steph. So really like him here in this matchup. These games are always very, very entertaining. Sacramento versus Golden State Warriors, they're always very close as well. So good amount of interest in Steph. I think Chris Paul's fine if you land on him. Draymond Green is back, so I do really like the price tag here. He was on a minutes limit, and then he was finally seeing close to 30 minutes before he obviously got ejected and missed 5 games. So really, really like the price tag for Draymond Green in his first game back. Makes my interest in Steph even more. You know, Klay Thompson's fine if you land on him. And I will mention, I don't know why, but whenever Kevon Looney plays the Kings, this dude absolutely goes off. So as we saw in this game here, I don't think there's Draymond in the first few games of the season, but still went for a 40 bomb there. Went for a 28 here in only 23 minutes. I don't think they played again since then. But then obviously during last year's playoffs, alongside Draymond and those guys, he played fantastic. He was he had like 20 rebounds in one game or even more. Just unreal stuff there by Looney. But yeah, I think he's a very interesting GPP option. His minutes aren't a guarantee, but this dude can absolutely go off in 20, 25 minutes like a portal. So I do have interest in Looney. Sarge has been playing well, so will eat into Looney's minutes. I don't know if I can trust that, especially with Draymond back. It will kind of kick down Sarge's minutes, but he should see probably 20 minutes at least. So I think it's an okay play. That hurts Wiggins. It hurts Kuminga. So really no interest in these value guys. It's really just going to be maybe a little bit of Sarge, but mostly Looney and Steph for me and Draymond. And then moving on to the Kings, I think it's still way too cheap of a price tag here for Sabonis, who does struggle against Golden State, especially with Draymond back now. But still, he's been printing pretty much triple doubles every single slate. So he's a very strong and safe spend up option here. Fox, don't love the price tag, but he's also been very, very good this season. And he always turns it on against Golden State. So going to be a very contrarian spend up option, but still a very strong one. Murray is looking like he's going to be doubtful. So that's just a bump to guys like Malik Monk, Herter, and Barnes, but don't think I'd land in either one of them or any of them. Maybe Monk. He'd probably be my favorite of the bunch. And then if Duarte does start off the bench, hasn't been great recently in the starts, but if he does start, obviously foul trouble has really hurt him the past 2 games. But if he does start, kind of have to throw that out the window. He should see, hopefully, mid 20s minutes at 4,000 or 4.1K. He is a pretty strong value play. So obviously we won't get that news right away, so we will have to kind of build around that and hope he does get that start there. But with the news that Keegan Murray is most likely doubtful, I do think we'll get that news that he'll probably be starting once again. So that is the lineup so far. Let's look to fill it in here for you guys for a potential lineup. 5,600 left over. So we'll just go to the guard spot real quick. Obviously, it's not all sorted out how I want it to be sorted out, but just for the sake of this video, we'll just throw people in that do have some interest in here. I do have interest in Caruso though there, even though it's blowout potential. And then getting over here to 6.6K. Don't mind landing on Gordon Hayward. But Cam Johnson, I do like that there. So obviously there's still a good amount of news on this slate we do have to kind of look out for. LaMelo officially, Bam, Fred, that Boston Celtics news, the Bulls news. So a lot of news that can affect this slate. But really right now my core plays are going to be this so far. Quickly, Butler, Draymond, Claxton, and Barnes. So more so kind of a mid-range approach, but we'll see kind of what happens with the value. Make sure to hit that like button. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.